Oh, I have seen some stuff. Welcome back to Crit and Crit. I am Sent,
I am Axion.
and it's time to reopen some old traumas. Where were you when you had your first exposure to the concept of the shipping wars? Because for me, it was this book, which is Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire as we continue through Final Fantasy V. But, yeah. I think for a lot of people in my general age range and preferences for books, which is a lot of people, Harry Potter was huge. Harry Potter was kind of where the shipping wars was the first exposure a lot of us had to just how intense communities could get regarding which fictional characters were kissing which fictional characters.
To answer your question, what year did this book come out?
Oh, that's a good question. 2000.
Okay, for me, it was about 10 years later. No, 11 years later. Because I was a Homestuck fan. And 2011, if I remember correctly, is when Homestuck introduced the trolls.
So you never really encountered shipping as a vicious concept until Homestuck?
I did not.
How did you manage to avoid it? It's like half the internet.
I pretty much stuck to fandoms that, at least in the areas where I spent time, did not have a shipping culture.
What fandoms? I need to know this now.
Well, that's the point. I was saying specifically the areas that I hung out with did not have a shipping culture. I was mostly in the Final Fantasy communities, and I guarantee you, there are shipping communities in the Final Fantasy communities, especially in the 6 and 7 communities where I hung out.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was going to say, like, I know you told me you grew up with, like, superhero cartoons, and you're going to tell me that comic books do not have shipping wars? We literally have fridges invented over this.
No, they absolutely do. The communities that I was in,
Gotcha.
however, did not partake in the shipping wars.
Okay.
They just never came up, mostly because they were primarily populated by late teens to early 20 guys. And in my experience, the communities that have larger shipping cultures tend to be communities that attract more younger readers and more female readers. This is not, of course, a guarantee. This is just a trend.
Fair. So yeah, 2000, Harry Potter 4 comes out. I'm 11. And I hadn't thought a whole lot about character romance, because, you know, maybe I'm alone with this, but I also did not think a whole lot about actual romance. I just wanted to read my books and play my Pokemon, and I was happy.
Yep.
And then, you know, you go to Borders to get other books, because I am a very old person, and I went to Borders, and walk by Harry Potter, see other fantasy books, and legit hear people arguing about the romances that they see in Harry Potter. This is also at the time that I'm starting to be allowed to go online by myself. Like, obviously some supervision, the usual talking to of don't give out personal information, don't agree to meet strangers, don't buy things, but nothing stopped me from going to forums where people talk about Harry Potter and looking to see stuff there. Maybe I couldn't register because I know a lot of places at the time said you had to be 13-year-old to register, and I was not really clear on the concept of you can just lie to the computer, because I was that kind of kid, like, oh yeah, I'm not 13, so I'll just leave now. But you can see people getting very, very offended that this fictional character did not ask out this other fictional character so on and so forth, and speculating, well, these characters get together. No, they can't get together because I want these characters to get together, and it was an education for 11-year-old me. And I do not recall anything more vicious than the discussion about whether or not Harry Cho was a viable ship. To clarify, for those who are not familiar, who are blessedly ignorant of the term shipping, relationshipping is what we're talking about.
It is the process where fans pair characters, or sometimes more than pairs, combine characters into romantic partnerships.
Some of which make sense. Some of which are deliberately off the wall because I have the power as a writer.
Yep, these are usually in fandom referred to as slash ships. Though
I was going with crack ships for the
crack
whole...
ships, yeah. Slash ships is more, if I remember correctly, is more when the fanfic writer changes the sexuality of the character, so it's gay slash, lesbian slash, whatever. But I could be wrong, I am not super familiar with fanfic and...
Yeah, this is actually a large reason that I'm not super familiar with fanfic terms, as getting to see just how angry people got about the book. Because remember, I am still a literal child at this point. It kind of scared me away from wanting to read fanfiction. I hadn't really been familiar with the concept because internet was new to me. I wasn't going to go check on it because, well, I didn't know it existed. But then you see people start talking about it in the framework of like, I have fixed this story and done this with this ship, and it's just like... And then you see people commenting about very personal things about the author, and it's just... People, as I recall, my first exposure to the concept of shipping and fandoms was so volatile and so heated that it kind of, to this day, I have not been able to fully shake my aversion to fanfiction.
I have a very strong memory of circa 2012-ish, you bragging to me how you had Pokemon Black, I think, and how you had a Garbodor on your team and named it fanfiction.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which book had just come out around then, because I'm pretty sure I had gone through another masochistous round of, let's read the speculation on the forums and see if we can figure things out, because that's kind of how the series ended up being structured. The fandom was just like, okay, this one came out, here's the clues we have and what might happen and so on and so forth, and then more shipping. More very vehement, violent shipping. Oh boy. And yeah, that had mostly been what I'd been exposed to. So, yeah, I, to this day, have a little bit of PTSD with regards to shipping fandoms. I've been trying to get better about it, I just try not to think about it. But it really started to become a thing with this book because, well, we actually start having the characters express interest in other characters. Like we see the beginnings of Harry. Last book we actually got to see the beginnings of it. Harry kind of developed a crush on Cho. And in this book, he's actually trying to act on it. It doesn't really go anywhere just due to various circumstances, but it's kind of the first time we see our main characters actually being put in a situation where romance might be involved. We see Hermione getting very angry at Ron for not picking up on what she thinks seem to have been obvious clues, and then Ron getting upset when Hermione goes to the ball with somebody else, because he was asking her as a backup plan, it looked like, and, you know, no girl wants to hear anything more than that. But, yeah, it really started here, at least in my experience, and it only ramped up as the series went on.
So, in this book, we have... Well, to be blunt, we're going to just start with the very obvious romantic tension between Ron and Hermione.
Would you say it's very obvious? But again, as an 11-year-old, I read this and was just like, oh, the friends are fighting. I don't get it. I did not understand for a couple of years why exactly Hermione was angry at Ron about it. So yeah, you say obvious, I disagree. I agree now, but not to the target audience, so I guarantee.
That's completely fair. I am definitely speaking this as a my current age person rereading the series as an adult.
Yeah, the counterpoint to this is, it is entirely plausible that I was just a dumb kid. I know I was fairly sheltered, so there were probably a lot of things that were rather obvious to people around me that I was just sitting there with a big old happy smile on my face and it flew right over my head.
Yep, and that is completely fair. Hey, puppy dog. I have a guest in my room.
That's where she went.
Anyway, we also have, as previously mentioned, Harry developing a crush on Cho Chang, and oh, the poor Parvati sisters.
Patil.
Parvati was hers.
Yeah, Parvati and Padma Patil.
Yeah. Those poor girls. They did not deserve anything that just happened to them.
Yep. So, to clarify, Harry was told he was required to bring a date to the dance and needed to find someone, but kept striking out. Well, he basically only wanted to ask Cho, and then that didn't work, so he asked Parvati as a backup. And Ron, just so he wouldn't be embarrassed, Harry begged her to ask, hey, will your sister go with Ron? And she said, okay, fine. Harry, who had basically only gone to the dance out of obligation, didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to Parvati during that, and just acted like he didn't want to dance, just went wandering off outside, so she was kind of left to her own devices. Ron, meanwhile, completely ignores Padma the entire time. So, yeah, it is very rough. It's a very rough read for, girls in that situation. They're like, hey, I get to go to this big fancy school dance. It's kind of a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and the date I'm with is just awful. At the same time, we know that Harry and Ron did not deliberately mean to be awful, because, well, when Harry talks to Hermione about things later, about just anytime shipping stuff comes up, because this comes up in a future book too, Harry does not have any frame of reference for how to talk to / behave around girls. It's kind of a miracle he's not resorting to just, I'm going to throw a spitball at you to get your attention, because it's apparently kindergarten again. But he did not realize that it was rude to, okay, I invited you to be my date to the ball, and I'm going to ignore you. I know I don't want to dance. Like, it's a dance. Why did you take me to the dance if you weren't going to dance? Oh, yeah, because you had to. But, yeah. So, hi, Puppy. But, yeah, it was...
Puppy has opinions about the dance.
Puppy does have opinions.
Let me land. There we go.
Yeah. So... we kind of sidetracked, because the topic I actually have on our notes for this episode is romance as a subplot. So, I'm not sure if you're aware of this axiom, but romance is literally the best-selling genre of book ever.
I vaguely recall stumbling on a statistic like that.
Yeah, romance is huge. So, it's a very, very long-standing hallmark to include in many books because it's just a natural human thing. People get a sense of fulfillment from living vicariously through characters for something like that. I mean, I know I read because I like the escapism and I want to get into another character's head for a while. It's fun. So, with romance being such a successful genre that resonates with so many people, it stands to reason that other hi puppy, what do you need? Other series and other genres are going to dip their toes into it here and there. Mm-hmm. The question is, when does a subplot become distracting? And I think that is something that falls down to each individual reader. Because I will readily admit that, as a child, I kind of found a lot of the romance and relationship stuff real boring, and also made me think of weird internet stuff, because the forums were active with lots of discussion about them. So, I I tended to shy away from a lot of romance books, which is going to be made very ironic when I point out that one of my favorite movies of all time is Princess Bride, which is this a kissing book? Yeah, I was that kid. So, Harry Potter starts to include that here we see Harry developing a crush on Cho, and that will be explored more later, and also Hermione and Ron bickering more. As the characters get older, they start focusing a little bit more on interpersonal relationship stuff, which when I was a kid reading it, I was kind of irked at because I did not make that leap myself.
Yep. Ew.
Yep.
Why are we talking about this when we could be talking about magic or Quidditch or bad guys?
If I wanted to see teenagers awkwardly being in love with each other in the hallways, I could just poke my head out of my calculus classroom. Can we get back to the cool fantasy stuff I'm here for? Yeah, I've gotten better. I don't mind it now, and honestly, I think it's a very solid element to add to a story because it really helps solidify character motivations and add that extra layer of stakes to many situations.
It also helps build...
It's a good tool.
It also helps build investment in readers who do enjoy that sort of thing. So and since the majority of readers tend to, it's a good thing for most authors to put in their stories as a method of getting reader investment.
Yep. This was just happened to be the first series I really ran into it in a conspicuous way, and in such a way that the fandom actually made it go so far beyond what was in the book. That was, I think shipping might be one of the first ways I was introduced to really reading into small details in the text, because if you have an idea of, I like these two characters together, the next logical step is find any scrap of textual evidence that supports your ship that you can draw on for your own personal headcanon. So, in a way, you could actually use that as a kind of backdoor into basic literary analysis. At the time, this was completely lost on me because, again, I was in, like, 6th grade. And obviously, I know there are many series that came before Harry Potter who had just as much investment in, the whole relationship thing. It was just the first one I was exposed to because it came out at just the right time for me to be finding access to.
Right.
And yeah, when done well, romance can be a very interesting addition to a story. It's that spice you add to a soup to make it hit just the right flavor. But if you don't balance it well, it can feel very much like a slog if you don't realize that's what you've signed up for. So, like, if you were me, and you were, I just wanted to see a book about a magic school and a magic contest, and there's a dance, I'm bored now. I say this, as an adult now I'm fine with it, but I also quite like Jane Austen, and most of her books are romances, but I knew that going in. So there's a lot of figuring out your expectations early on, and how safe it is for an author to play with them. Because sometimes it works really well if you mess with expected convention, and sometimes it backfires. It's hard to say because every reader is going to have a different threshold of what works for them personally.
Right. And to some degree, that's something you kind of have to experiment around with and learn how you feel and what works for you. Because it's not always something that's going to be obvious to you going in.
Yep, and like I've said, I am a lot older now. I have done a lot more reading in the time since, so I've gotten a lot better read on just genres as a whole, my own personal thresholds for things, and understanding things more on a structural, foundational level than just it thing that happened, move on. So, yeah. It's a perfectly natural place for it to come up the series. If this is the midpoint, this is when things are going to start shifting, and we're going to have a lot more heavy subject matter, just as the kids are also dealing with a lot more intense personal emotions because they're about that age. Well, I mean, they're 14 in this book, so a little bit past that, I think. But yeah, it's really starting to become a thing. Ah, they're sleeping.
You think they're sleeping.
What is Death but the real nap?
Something Hamlet here.
Don't make me do Hamlet right now.
Why not?
Because do you really want to get me on a roll here?
I honestly don't know how to respond to that.
It's like, don't make me do the entire to be or not to be speech, because you know I'll do it.
I know you would.
Alright, so, yeah. There's also the whole Rita Skeeter angle to look into this as well, because it was not used just as hey, let's put some romance and force some drama into the story that I thought it was when I was a kid at first, because again, I was a dumb kid in some places. But the mere suggestion of the shipping wars was able to fuel Rita Skeeter's campaign against Hermione.
Yep,
Because telling people that they should be shipping Harry Hermione, but Hermione broke his heart to go run off with Victor Crumb, that got a lot of people's attention in universe.
I mean, just look at modern real-world tabloids and sensationalist news, and you can see that a lot of what makes for that kind of literature and that kind of what's the word I'm looking for? That kind of news, quote unquote, is very much focused on who's in a relationship with who. Oh, that was a dirty trick, game.
Haha.
Ooh, shield. Cannot use a shield, apparently. But yeah, just go look at the tabloid rack at any grocery store, and you're going to see half of the headlines there are basically so-and-so is in a relationship with so-and-so, or so-and-so was cheating on so-and-so.
If I never see another article about the UK royal family again, it will be too soon. I have lost count of how many I've had to walk past just trying to go get my groceries with Harry and Meghan on it. And I'm like, I don't even live in a country that's affected by this.
So I want parts to do.
But yeah, at least the romance subplot does not overshadow the major plot here, though at times in the next book, it did get a little awkward, which we'll talk about more at that point. I keep saying we'll eventually get to it.
But yeah, that kind of thing makes money and gets attention, and as such, it should be really no surprise that Rita Skeeter made it her bread and butter.
There. So remember, she does not deal exclusively in stirring up romance tabloids.
Yep. But it's a huge part of her efforts, at least in the later parts of the story.
That's fair. But yeah, I think I'm kind of scraping the bottom of the well on this one.
Yep, that's completely fair. We're getting...
There's not as much to work with in this one.
Yep, but this will be a subject that we will regularly revisit going forward.
Yay.
Because it's something that, well, one, as Sint said, keeps coming up throughout the fandom, and at this point, the fandom is, historically speaking, at this point, the fandom was large enough that it was unreasonable to ignore. And two, it's a part of the story. Particularly Harry's own romantic interests are going to keep popping up. But also, there is going to be a constant subplot going forward of Ron and Hermione at various stages of their relationship. And it's just not going to really be feasible to ignore that. So, we'll probably touch on this at some point in the future when we get to the next book and it next becomes relevant. See y'all then.
Bye.